Okay, so let's dive into this. The big news lately, obviously, has been that May 2025 India-Pakistan conflict.
Right, and the reports coming out.
And yeah, some, frankly, pretty unsettling reports about Indian Air Force losses, including those advanced Rafale jets.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes you ask, what's this really telling us about the state of India's Air Force, its strength, and, well, where it's heading?
Yeah, and what's interesting, or maybe concerning, is how this echoes things we've seen before. Sort of older anxieties bubbling up again.
You mean like the 2019 clashes?
Exactly. If you connect the dots back to February 2019, after those clashes, remember the Indian Prime Minister came out quite strongly.
He did. Said if they'd had the Rafale, then things might have been different.
Precisely. And that really highlighted this perceived gap in capability they felt at the time.
Right. So this isn't just, reporting the latest headlines for us. We want to dig deeper here.
We do.
Understand what's actually driving India's big defense buys, their procurement decisions, and, crucially, how this whole aerial power balance is shifting, or might be shifting, in that region.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal really is to pull out the key insights from the reports we're seeing, get past the surface noise.
Absolutely. The mission, if you like, is to filter all the recent analysis and figure out what's critical for understanding India's fighter fleet modernization, especially now, after these events, and with everything else going on geopolitically.
Okay, so let's maybe start back in 2019 then. Remind us exactly what happened there and why it put such a spotlight on needing jets like the Rafale.
Well, February 2019, like you said, there was that pretty major aerial skirmish. Pakistan claimed they shot down 2 Indian jets.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a MiG-29 and an Su-30 MKI.
And they captured a pilot?
And they captured an Indian pilot, yes. That whole incident had a big impact. And the Prime Minister's comments afterwards, but they clearly showed the government felt they needed more advanced aircraft urgently.
And that push led directly to getting the Rafales, which started arriving in 2020.
Correct.
But now, fast forward to May 2025, we're hearing about more losses in this, 3-day conflict? What are the reports saying this time?
So the reports coming out of the May 7th to 10th conflict are quite concerning for India. They suggest losses of 3 Rafale jets.
3?
Yes, 3 Rafales plus another Su-30 MKI and a MiG-29.
Okay.
And understandably, losses like that, especially of the Rafales, have really reignited that whole debate and frankly, the urgency around needing 5th-generation fighters. It wasn't a new idea for India, of course, but this seems to have pushed it right back to the top of the agenda.
No, definitely not new, because Pakistan had already made a pretty big move on that front, hadn't they? Even before this latest conflict.
They had. That's a key piece of context here.
Yep.
In 2024, Pakistan confirmed that deal with China.
For the J-35s.
For 40 J-35 5th-generation stealth fighters.
Yeah.
That announcement alone put a lot of pressure on India to, get moving on a comparable platform.
And these recent losses just turn up the volume on those calls.
Exactly. You're hearing it much louder now from Indian defense analysts, from military planners, the need to fast-track their own 5th-gen program.
So it really does feel like the whole air power dynamic there is potentially in flux. I also saw mention of an Indian operation called Sinandor. What was that about?
Right, Operation Sinandor.
Yeah.
The Indian Air Force reportedly launched that around May 6th.
Just before the main clashes.
Just before, yes.
Yeah.
The stated goal was neutralizing targets inside Pakistan and in some disputed areas. But the crucial part, according to the analysis we're seeing, is this growing body of evidence that suggests Pakistan actually scored some major victories in the air battles that happened after Sinandor kicked off.
Okay, so not just the reported Indian losses, but actual Pakistani successes in air-to-air combat.
That seems to be the picture emerging.
Right.
And taken together the losses, the reported Pakistani victories, it naturally raises, serious questions about how effective India's top fighters are right now against a peer adversary.
Mm-hmm.
It just hammers home how critical advanced air power is for both countries. They place immense importance on it.
And the timing of all this is interesting, too. Weren't Russia and the U.S. just recently trying to sell their 5th-gen jets to India?
That's a very sharp observation.
Yeah.
Yes, just months before this, you had the Aero India air show.
Right.
And both Russia pushing their Su-57 and the U.S. showcasing the F-35 were making their pitches to India very actively.
But the F-35 always seems to come with strings attached, doesn't it?
Well, that's what the source material suggests is the hurdle. The U.S. tends to impose operational restrictions on how their aircraft can be used.
End user agreements and things like that.
Exactly. And apparently those restrictions don't really mesh well with how India's military plans to operate their operational doctrine.
Okay, so if the F-35 is likely out for political or doctrinal reasons, that really narrows the field, doesn't it?
It certainly seems to. It points towards the Russian Su-57 becoming maybe the leading contender.
Potentially even building it in India under license.
That kind of deal, a licensed production agreement, is reportedly under serious consideration, yes.
Okay, so before we get too far into the future possibilities, let's take stock of India's current elite fleet, the Su-30 MKI and the Rafale. You've touched on them, but what are the key strengths and, maybe more importantly now, the weaknesses?
Okay, let's break it down. The Su-30 MKI first. It's definitely a capable jet, big advantages. The large aircraft carries a heavy radar system, more powerful than the Rafales.
More range, maybe?
More power, certainly.
Right.
It's also known for being highly maneuverable, a real dogfighter in some ways, and it can carry a lot of different weapons, a heavy payload.
There's always a but.
There is. The but is its age, specifically its avionics.
Yeah.
Much of the core tech, including its radar, the NR-1M PSA, Passive Electronically Scanned Array,
PSA?
that dates back to the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And in the world's radar tech, that's getting pretty old. It's considered somewhat outdated compared to modern ES radars.
ESA being active electronically scanned array, more advanced.
Much more advanced. Think of the pizza like a powerful flak light beam you have to mechanically steer. And the ESA is more like thousands of tiny flashlights. You can point in different directions almost instantly. Much faster, much better at tracking multiple targets, more resistant to jamming.
Got it. So the Su-30 is powerful, maneuverable, but its eyes are maybe getting a bit old.
That's a decent analogy, yeah. Its ability to handle a complex, modern threat environment might be becoming a weakness.
Okay, what about the Rafale then? Newer jet? French? Should be more modern?
It is in some ways. Its radar is more modern than the Su-30's PSA. It likely has an ESA radar, though maybe not the most cutting-edge version,
All right.
but it's a much lighter aircraft overall. And India only has a small fleet, just 36 of them. That's not a huge number.
Scale matters.
Scale definitely matters. Its sensor suite is also smaller than the Su-30's, and its maneuverability, while good, isn't generally seen as being in the same league as the Su-30 for close-in air combat. Plus, it wasn't really designed primarily as an air superiority fighter. It's more of a multi-role aircraft.
And the cost was very high?
Extremely high, over $240 million per plane, purportedly. So the fact that 3 have allegedly been shot down, that's significant. It raises definite questions about its survivability against, capable adversaries with modern gear.
Which brings us back to Pakistan and the equipment they're getting from China. The J-10C, the missiles. How much of a factor is that?
It seems to be a huge factor. There are reports highlighting the success of the Chinese J-10C fighter in Pakistani service, and maybe even more importantly, the PL-15 air-to-air missile.
The PL-15, what's special about that?
Range. It's a very long-range missile, significantly longer reach than most of the missiles India currently fields on its fighters.
So Pakistan might be able to shoot first.
That's the potential advantage, yes. Having that longer range engagement capability gives them a serious edge. And these successes, real or perceived, definitely bolster the idea that Pakistan is gaining a capability advantage, largely thanks to this Chinese tech.
Man, that's a real turnaround from how things used to be. The sources mentioned India historically had the edge, right? Back in the Cold War.
Oh, absolutely. For a long time, the Indian Air Force definitely had a qualitative advantage. 1971, their MiG-21s were generally better than Pakistan's F-104 starfighters.
Right.
Then in the 80s, India got the MiG-23ML, the MiG-29. These had better radars, better beyond visual range missiles than Pakistan's early F-16s, the F-16AB models. India held the edge.
So what changed?
Two big things, really. First, the massive growth and improvement of China's own military aviation industry over the last couple of decades. They're producing seriously capable aircraft now.
And providing them to Pakistan.
And providing them to Pakistan. Second, delays in India's own plans to develop or acquire next-generation fighters. They haven't fielded a true fifth-gen capability yet.
So that historical advantage has eroded, maybe even reversed.
It seems largely reversed, yes. Some analysis we're seeing suggests that Pakistan's J-10C, right now, might actually have more overall air-to-air combat potential than anything India is currently flying.
Wow. That's a big statement.
It is. And that's before the J-35s arrive.
Right, the stealth fighters. That's the next big step.
That's the next big step. The J-35s are expected to start becoming operational before 2030.
And how much better are they supposed to be?
Significantly better. Even if they're maybe not quite on par with China's absolute top-end J-20. Compared to anything else in the region. Big jump. We're talking a larger, more capable radar than the J-10Cs, better endurance, meaning they can fly longer missions, advanced stealth features making them harder to detect,
Harder to target.
much harder to target, and things like distributed aperture systems.
Okay, what's that?
It's basically a network of optical sensors embedded around the aircraft, gives the pilot a seamless 360-degree view of the surrounding airspace, day or night. Its incredible situational awareness helps detect threats, like incoming missiles, potentially even before the radar picks them up.
So, better eyes, stealthier, flies longer. That sounds like a serious problem for India's current fleet.
It's poised to put India's top fighter units at a further disadvantage, yes. Even compared to the J-10C, the J-35 represents a clear leap ahead.
So, stepping back and looking at the big picture, what does this all mean strategically? It feels like India's in a bit of a tough spot.
I think tough spot is putting it mildly. The performance, the demonstrated effectiveness of these modern Chinese fighters in Pakistani hands, that has to be causing serious concern in Delhi. Major concern.
Because Pakistan isn't stopping, right? They're getting more J-10Cs, other advanced jets.
Exactly. They're continuing to get more J-10Cs. They're getting advanced versions of the JF-17 Fighter Block 3,
Right.
and then the J-35s are coming. Add all that up, and India could be facing a really significant qualitative gap in air power relatively soon.
And their options for closing that gap quickly seem limited. We talked about the U.S. F-35 maybe being out. What about Europe?
Europe's own fifth-gen programs like the Franco-German-Spanish FCAS or the British Tempest, they're still years away, probably not fielding anything truly operational within the next decade, maybe longer. So realistically, not a short-term solution for India.
Which
Seems to leave Russia as the main potential supplier if India wants to get a fifth-generation capability relatively quickly to counter the J-35.
the Su-57?
The Su-57. And kind of ironically, these recent events, the reported issues with the Rafale, the perceived effectiveness of the Chinese jets, it might actually strengthen Russia's negotiating position. It potentially discredits some of the European alternatives in India's eyes and makes the Russian option look more necessary, perhaps.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What we've really unpacked today is a situation where India seems to have faced some setbacks, some reported losses in the recent conflict, raising questions about its current top fighters like the Rafale and Su-30 MKI.
Right, limitations being exposed, perhaps.
At the same time, Pakistan is moving ahead pretty quickly with modernizing its air force, bringing in advanced Chinese tech, the J-10C now, the J-35 stealth fighter on the horizon,
Creating a potential capability gap.
which leaves India with narrowing options and this urgent need to get its own fifth-generation program moving, likely looking towards Russia's Su-57 as maybe the most viable path in the near term.
That captures the key dynamics, I think. And for you, the listener, what this really highlights is just how high the stakes are in this region. Maintaining military balance, especially in the air, is crucial.
Yeah.
And these trends we're seeing, they could have really long-term consequences, potentially reshaping air power dynamics across South Asia for years to come.
Definitely food for thought. Maybe a final question to leave everyone with is, given all these moving parts, the technology, the geopolitics, the regional rivalries, what are the broader implications here, not just for India and Pakistan, but for overall stability? Could we see major strategic shifts, new alliances forming as this balance of power in the sky potentially changes?